Welcome to another episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your late night host, Dom, and in this episode, we'll be looking at the recent supernatural horror film that is written and directed by Cameron and Colin Cairnes, Late Night with the Devil. Production on Late Night with the Devil started on February 13, 2022, with the Emirati studio, Imagination, and the American genre label Spooky Pictures attached to produce. Writer-director duo Cameron and Colin Cairnes described their decision to base Late Night with the Devil around a late night talk show by stating, in the 1970s and 80s, there was something slightly dangerous about late night TV. Talk shows in particular were a window into some strange adult world. We thought combining that charged live-to-air atmosphere with a supernatural could make for a uniquely frightening film experience. The Cairnes brothers offered the role of Jack Delroy to David Dastmalchian after reading an article Dastmalchian wrote for the Fangoria magazine about regional TV horror hosts. Dastmalchian accepted the part after being sent a lookbook designed to resemble a 1970s TV guide, which I think is pretty awesome, in my opinion. I would love to see that, just get everything sent like that, along with the script. And that'd just be awesome. I don't know how many people out there remember TV guides, I think it was Star Wars. It might have been the first one was coming out, and they used to have exclusive covers, and you collect all of them. They're just all they are TV guides, and they're just a snapshot into what was available on TV at the time, because at the time you couldn't just go onto your TV and check what was on. You couldn't just go to an app on your TV and play something. You couldn't even go to YouTube or anything. You had to look it up to see what was going to be broadcast for the day. Dastmalchian's casting was announced on June 24th, 2022. Late Night with the Devil had its world premiere at the South by Southwest Film Festival on March 10th, 2023, and received positive reviews from critics, garnering praise for its performances, production design, and technical aspects, with horror novelist Stephen King, one of my favorites of all time, posting on Twitter or X, whichever one you want to call it, Late Night with the Devil. I got a screener. It's absolutely brilliant. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Your results may vary, as they say, but I urge you to watch it when you can. And watch it when I could. I did. So let's really get into what this movie's about. Late Night with the Devil.
We are back in 5, 4.
Now, here's Mr. Midnight, Jack Delroy.
Oh, good evening, night owls, and thank you for allowing me into your living rooms once again. Well, night owls, we've got a heck of a show in store for you tonight, and I'm very excited for you to see it all unfold before your very eyes. I really hope you love it. Gosh, I hope you love it. Please love it. Love it.
I'm trying to host a nationally syndicated talk show, and I'm trying to help you keep it on the air.
We all know how important it is to keep our sponsors and affiliates happy, but in my humble opinion, there is only one person who really matters in this whole darn crazy business. And that is you, our viewer.
You're meddling with things you don't understand.
Whoa! Now, as you know, here on Night Owls, we think it's very important to keep an open mind. Please welcome Dr. June Ross Mitchell and Lily, the young subject of the book, Conversations with the Devil.
I really don't think it's a good idea, Jack. She's becoming more unpredictable.
That's a good thing. That's why we still do live TV.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for a live television first as we attempt to commune with the devil.
Lily, can you hear me?
Good to see you again, Jack.
Lily, return to me.
This isn't about ratings anymore.
No one's going anywhere.
How could you let it happen, Jack? How could you let it happen?
Please be warned, anyone with young children in the room. What you're about to see
You okay, Jack?
is profoundly disturbing and shocking. You get out there, Mr. Midnight, and you knock him dead.
The film starts off framed as a documentary investigating the unexplained events that occurred on October 31st, 1977, during the live broadcast of the Halloween episode of Night Owls with Jack Dalroy, which was a very successful variety late-night talk show that was competing in ratings with The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. The documentary explains the background on the host and his television connections. Night Owls host Jack Dalroy, who's played by David Dastmalchian, makes regular visits to The Grove, an elite California camp for rich and powerful men. Sometime later, his wife, Madeline, who's played by Georgina Haig, contracts lung cancer, which turns out to be terminal, despite being a non-smoker, and dies. Her death, having had a major effect on Jack, causes him to halt production on Night Owls. Jack ultimately returns, but the show does not attain the same level of success that it had before. In order to recover his ratings, Jack decides to do a special occultism-themed episode on Halloween night at the show's Manhattan studio. The rest of the film comprises salvaged footage from the episode along with behind-the-scenes additions. Special guests for the episodes include psychic Christou, skeptic former magician Carmichael the Conjurer, parapsychologist author June Ross Mitchell, June's subject Lily Diabo, and musician Cleo James. They are played by Faisal Bazzi, Ian Bliss, Laura Gordon, Ingrid Torelli, and Nicole Chapman, respectively. During the broadcast, Christou is exposed for giving cold readings until he suddenly experiences a real premonition about someone named Minnie and is left shaken. During the commercial breaks, Night Owls producer Leo Fisk, played by Josh Quangtart, stresses to Jack over the show's sudden success. Jack brings out Carmichael, who insists that Christou is a phony, but Jack supports him after pointing out that Minnie was a nickname he gave to Madeline. As Christou argues with Carmichael, he becomes sick and projectile vomits a black liquid and is rushed to the hospital during another commercial break. In the subsequent segment, June introduces Lily, the sole survivor of a mass suicide committed by a satanic church that worshipped Abraxas. Carmichael is in disbelief over June's claims that Lily is connected to a demon she dubs Mr. Wriggles. Despite June's insistence on possible consequences, Jack convinces her to conjure the demon. During another commercial break, the crew informs Jack that Christou has died en route to Mount Sinai Hospital due to internal hemorrhaging. During June's conjuring, Lily becomes possessed by Mr. Wriggles, causes the electricity to go haywire, and levitates in her chair. In her possessed state, Lily makes an oblique reference to having met Jack before under the tall trees. Carmichael challenges June by having Jack's sidekick, Gus McConnell, played by Reese Autry, take part in a hypnotism demonstration that causes everyone in the studio to see worms coming out of and ravaging Gus, including Gus himself. When the production team rewinds the footage, it proves that Carmichael's demonstration was merely a hallucination experienced by everyone in the studio. However, the supernatural phenomena that occurred during June's conjuring appears unaltered in the recorded playback. Jack is horrified when he notices an apparition of the spiritual Madeline standing behind him in the footage. Carmichael angrily accuses Jack of orchestrating the events as an elaborate hoax. Lily again becomes possessed and quickly slaughters June, Gus, and Carmichael. The audience flees from the studio and Jack runs to the exit. Jack is suddenly transported to a nightmarish version of the show. He relives moments in the past before it is revealed that he has a connection to the demon possessing Lily, having encountered it during a ceremony at the Grove. It is also revealed that Jack was indirectly responsible for Madeline contracting cancer, the price for Night Owl's sudden fame. Madeline's spirit confronts Jack, and he stabs a ritualistic dagger into her body. Suddenly, the scene shifts to the now empty studio, with a horrified Jack revealed to have stabbed Lily. Jack stands over the body of his dead guest as the police sirens slowly get louder in the distance. Now let us move on to some trivia about the film, Late Night with the Devil, and learn something about the behind the scenes, the production, and the actors. The movie made $666,666 on Sunday, March 24th, 2024 at the box office, according to the distributor. In all likelihood, it wasn't a coincidence, as box office figures can be manipulated by around 5%. By the distributor to compensate for receipts not tracked by Rent Track. Although I think it just makes for good publicity. I mean, you hear that the movie made $666,666, and it's like, are you ready to see the movie that made $666,000? The devil was with them that night at the theater, or you know what I mean, like that weekend. It was all about the devil. Everyone wanted to see the devil. It's just, it makes for good publicity. Like, you could, you can trot that out, bring people around to that, hearing that. Like, I don't know. I like that, sometimes you can, sure it is fudging the numbers a little bit, but it makes for a good, like, set piece to go along with, like, the movie you're promoting. The Carmichael character is very clearly based on, and actually, like, physically kind of looks like, the real-life James Randi. Randi was a talented musician who became a famous psychic debunker, and he started an institute that offered a large reward to anyone that could reproduce their supposed paranormal powers in controlled conditions. Over decades, nobody was able to win the money. I think it was like $1 million he offered. It was a lot of money, like that they were offering, because they were like, come on, prove it. And it was so funny because, like, there's this one guy who, I think it was on Johnny Carson. He had performed before, and it was like this whole like thing that he could like move the telephone, the yellow pages, without blowing, or like without using his breath, without using any wind or whatever. Like, he could just use his mind. But like, they made it so like Randi, like, I don't know why this guy would agree to the conditions. It's like Randi would control everything. He would like make sure that like he had nothing on him. He would make sure that like there was other pieces of paper around him. So it would like, because he was like, I know the way that you're using your breath. He's using a technique where it's not sounding like he's using his breath or looking like it, but he is just like blowing the pages. And the guy, like, he spends like hours just, or like the whole time just like staring at it, trying to do it, and like thinking like, oh man, it's gonna work. And it never worked. It's so funny. The name of the mysterious men's only club situated in the California Redwoods was the Grove in the movie. It was inspired by the real-life Bohemian Grove located at 20601 Bohemian Avenue in Monterey, California. The Bohemian Grove's membership boasts several politicians, including 3 presidents of the United States, industrialists, and other noted figures. One of the Real Grove's founders was Ambrose Pierce, author of several horror stories and the cynical Devil's Dictionary. The Grove's rituals, which have been described as falling between occult and quiche, include frequent images of owls. And more recently, well, I guess this was like the mid-2000s or early 2000s, Alex Jones, InfoWars Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, actually broke in and like filmed the Bohemian Grove, because it's said to be like where, you know, people of power, like presidents and industrialists and all these rich people come together and they decide like what they're going to do with the world now and like how they're going to run things and who's going to win to be the president and who's going to be a politician and this and that. And some people believe, you know, that's what happens. And, you know, maybe these things happen there. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's just a bunch of rich people getting drunk and playing around, you know, and dress up. But there's a movie called Conspiracy. I think it's called Conspiracy. It's a pretty good one. It's from like the mid-2000s or maybe the late 2000s. It's pretty good. It's kind of the same thing. It's this guy. It's like a documentary style where he infiltrates them. It's not in Bohemian Grove. I forgot what it's called in this. But, you know, he infiltrates them and then slowly, like, starts becoming involved with it more and more. And then it's a pretty good one. You know, it's a solid little shorter, or it's just an more independent film. Honestly, I probably could do this for a review at one point, but it's pretty good. You know, it's like I said, it's not great, but it's pretty solid for what you're getting. I think you can watch on Netflix. Last time I saw, I think it was either on Netflix or it was on, maybe it's on Tubi. I don't remember, but it's pretty good. Check it out. In a 2024 interview with the Movable Fest, Colin Cairnes explained the reason the film is set in 1977. The film had to happen on a Monday night for Sweeps Week, so the stakes are high, and this is the beginning of the week that's going to make or break Jack Delroy's career, right? And so it just so happened that 1977 was the only year in the 70s where Halloween fell on a Monday night. So we thought, 77? That's pretty much, you're right on the thick of it. So that worked for us. And anyone out there who's listening who was too young to remember what Sweeps Weeks is, I honestly, I was sitting in the theater and I was like, I mean, most older people are going to remember this. People up until like, maybe I would say early, like late millennials probably wouldn't remember. Like, I don't think my brother remembers what Sweeps Week is. Or if he does remember what it, like, he doesn't know what it was called. He doesn't understand what the idea was. I think he probably just remembers, oh, like they used to do this or they used to do like crazy things here for Sweep Weeks. Sweep Weeks is basically a time and a point in the calendar for TV stations to kind of decide like, okay, hey, if your ratings aren't good by this point, or we're not seeing an incline, we're seeing a decline in ratings, and the way that they used to figure out ratings, how many people were watching. Literally, you had to send out a thing to people's houses, like where you would literally log it into a book. It was called Nielsen Ratings. Nielsen was the company that did it. You would log it in, what you were watching, when you were watching it, how long you watched for, who watched it, and then you would send it back to them, and then from there they would compile all that data, and it'd be like, okay, so for the beginning of this year's, okay, here's his like rating, here's who's watching it, and so from there they would kind of decide, you know, like, oh, okay, because at the time, you know, you couldn't watch reruns. You couldn't like if you did watch reruns, it was basically only if they didn't have a new episode and they were playing a rerun, or if it was in syndication, which is a whole other thing, and then you have to wait for that particular episode to come on in syndication to watch it again. So you couldn't just readily go and check the film like you, or the movie or the show like you could nowadays. And I can't believe I'm explaining all this to everybody, but it is kind of helpful to know, like for this. But yeah, so basically from there, if your ratings were bad, they would cut the show. They would maybe give it maybe an episode or two, then they'd be like, it's done, or they'd let it play out the rest of it, just based on the ratings. Or then from there they would be like, okay, you're good to go for the rest of your season, and we're gonna approve you for another season. And it's just crazy. They used to do it twice. I think 6 weeks was October, and I think that it was in like April or something, or maybe March. It was like once or twice a year because the way that television seasons worked back then was it was the end of one year to the beginning of the next, kind of like how school functions. It's like you start in like, well, I remember starting in September, August, and then you go to May, and then the summer would be like the break. That's where everything would take a break, and that, like during the summer they might have like some game shows, or they may have like a show, but it's like it wasn't anything too big, too crazy, and yeah, and then then things like Hulu came along, Netflix, then they started making their own apps, and then from there, like it just started going, like things were getting rated really bad, but not because it's because people started waiting to watch things. Because with the onset of DVR and Hulu, you could wait to watch your show. You didn't have to watch a show right on time on a Thursday night at 6 or 7. You could record it, or you could watch it later on another day when you had more time to watch it. So a lot of these shows that were like highly, like critically praised, would get like these bad ratings because people weren't watching them at that time, and because at the time then they weren't trying to include Hulu, they weren't trying to include DVR information. At that time too, what they were doing was they were sending out little things to kind of record what your cable box was watching, your antenna was watching. Because who watches basic, not even basic cable, but basic just like television anymore? I don't know anyone who does, because that's kind of crazy to think about nowadays. Is we had TVs in every room, right? Only the TV in the living room had direct TV hooked up to it, satellite. Everything else was just off of antennas, which you would just get like channel 10, channel 5, channel 12, channel 15, 45, 61, and then maybe some random ones like local access things here and there, and that's it. You couldn't get anything else. It's just so crazy how much it's evolved. Like there was a point where I did have DirecTV in my room, and then I got rid of it because I watch everything through Hulu. I watch everything through Netflix. I don't really watch things and like commercials were getting annoying to watch, because like you watch something on like Hulu. If you're not paying to get rid of the commercials, okay, so that's how I had it for a while, and then I got rid of the commercials because I was getting even more frustrated with them, because like I'm watching a show like It's Always Sunny, and why should I be watching a show that's already like this many seasons in, right? If I'm going back to watch some of the seasons, why should I still watch commercials if it's not even like the new season? I can understand if it was like the new season, whatever. Point is, we've gotten so far away from that old model of television and sweeps and all that it's such a distinct like culture and time that like I think like Gen X, or not Gen X, Gen Z and Gen Alpha or whatever the newer one because they're just going to look back and they're going to be like, why did you did it? This was such a weird way to do it. It's like, yeah, but see, we didn't have the technology. Well, the technology was there. It just wasn't readily available as consumer ready. On a consumer ready level. So, it's just so crazy how much television has changed from because like I said, from the way you did it, from I would say maybe the 60s to the early 2000s with sweeps like that. That's how TV was done. Like, really, what changed a lot of the stuff was things where there's a few shows that you could point to distinctly that show that this is the change in the way that we're going to be, like, that will be how we watch things now. And that's I would say The Sopranos, Mad Men, Lost, and then eventually Game of Thrones. Do I necessarily like all of those shows? No. I mean, Lost is my favorite show. And I love Mad Men. But I never got into The Sopranos, and I didn't really like the TV show of Game of Thrones. But you arguably you have to say that those really did help to change. And, I would say, The Walking Dead, maybe, or, Breaking Bad. Because people had such different places to go to, that it broke and shattered that hold that the studios had, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, and all of them. It's just so crazy. It's just really crazy. And I hate that I went on this long tangent about Sweeps Week, and now let's get back to your regularly scheduled programming. The ghost of Jack Delroy's wife, Minnie, can be seen briefly at several points in the film without being mentioned. Once early in the film, in a mirror backstage just as the crew is about to go back on the air, and again in Carmichael's pocket watch as it sits on a table on set. Honestly, I really want to go back. I can't wait because it's almost, from the point that I'm recording, it's almost going to be released on Shudder. I can't wait to go back and watch this again. I can't wait to watch this movie again. I want to go see it in theaters, but I'm just a little too busy. And, there's only certain films where, I'm yeah, I gotta see that again in theaters. Endgame. I had that movie, I saw it 7 times in theaters. But, God, that's just, I love little things like that where it's now it gives you, not only does it give you a chance to go back and watch something, but it rewards you for going back and watching it, because then you can see these little things that you didn't see and notice earlier. You can see and notice things that maybe you didn't have a good understanding about before, and then when you're like, oh, okay, now this makes a little bit more sense to me. I like films that do that, where, it takes a little bit, you can watch it the first time and it's still good, it's great. But then you watch it more and more and you're like, man, every time I watch it, there's something new and something different, something I see that I didn't notice, and I like that a lot. Right as the film was about to premiere to the public, Late Night with the Devil ran into some controversy with a trio of still images, specifically title cards between transitions. The use of AI in film and TV has been a hot-button topic since 2023's dual Hollywood strikes, which were a stumbling block in signing new deals with the actors and writers unions. The new WGA contract that came out as a result of the strikes includes wording that AI-generated material cannot be used to undermine a writer's credit or separated rights, while the SAG deal required that consent and compensation guidelines are required to use AI in order to replicate actors' likenesses. Cameron and Colin Cairnes, the Australian siblings, obviously, who directed and wrote the film, released the segment to Variety, clarifying the scope of the AI art in the film. And the statement reads, in conjunction with our amazing graphics and production design team, all of whom worked tirelessly to give the film the 70s aesthetic we had always imagined. We experimented with AI for the 3 still images, which we edited further and ultimately appear as very brief interstitials in the film. Cairnes and his brothers also told Variety, "We feel incredibly fortunate to have had such a talented and passionate cast, crew, and producing team to go above and beyond to help bring this film to life. We can't wait for everyone to see it for themselves this weekend." The first person to bring light this use of AI was from a Letterboxd review on March 19th from user Base Gizmo, who wrote that because of the use of AI art, I can enjoy the amazing performances and clever editing. This ended up triggering more low ratings on Letterboxd, as well as discussion that flowed to Twitter or X or whatever you call it, in which fans wrote messages like, "My little heart broke watching Late Night with the Devil this evening to see they utilized AI art." And that just gets us into the question of, if we're going to draw a line at any AI art, correct, be it a big studio production or a smaller independent film like this, where does that line start and stop? Because I say that this film is a very great film, and I'm going to talk about it in my final thoughts. But does that really undermine the performances and the production value and the direction and the script and the story, the themes, everything about this film that comes together like any other film? Like, do those 3 screenshots of AI art truly hurt anyone? And I would say maybe it might hurt because the fact that, yes, maybe they should have got someone to come in initially to draw out something. Then from there you have your graphic designers, whoever, come in and touch them up or do this or do that. Maybe even like Photoshop something yourself, this and that. But when it's 3 still images that they are up for maybe 5 seconds in maybe, I don't know, a total of like 5-6 shots, does that really distract and derail you? When I was watching with my brother, at no point did I sit there and say, "Oh well, there's the AI art. It's clearly AI art. I cannot watch this. I have to go get my money back." And to say that it distracted you that much is, I feel like, a little dishonest. I feel like that you were being ridiculous. And yes, we should not use AI. I understand it. But when you're, like, we shouldn't use just AI. If you're taking AI art and you're creating something with it initially, and you're going in and you're changing and you're making it your own yourself, that's what we do with Photoshop. Photoshop is basically kind of the same thing we do. We take something, we bring it in, we adjust it, and, that's what we do. I don't understand. I can understand if, like, the whole opening sequence was AI, or, like, all of the production special effects were done with AI, or there was clearly, like, the audience was generated by AI. Okay, yeah. I understand that. At that point, yeah, you're taking jobs away from people. You're clearly not understanding what it's meant to be used for, and you're using it to just cut around things here and there. But that's something that a bigger studio would do. That's not something that these people who are just trying to give you their film, it's a small budget film, it clearly, made a splash. So at the film festivals it was at, it got great reviews. And what's funnier is that whole controversy blew over in a matter of days, because people realized that it's not the fact that, like, oh yes, they used it. It's crazy they used it. We understand that, the part is like, we can kind of forgive it because it's a smaller budget film. It's not like they were being malicious. It's not like they were deceiving us. It's not like they were trying to pull a fast one and be like, oh, like with Secret Wars. Secret Wars, their whole opening title cards was done with AI. And it's just a little ridiculous to think that you want to discount a whole film because, oh, they took some art and then they adjusted it and then they put it in the film. It's a little ridiculous. I don't know. Maybe that's just me on my soapbox. But I really think there's a time and a place in a discussion that really needs to be happening with that, right? Where if there's these huge, big studios that are taking these jobs away from people and they're just scanning people's likenesses, they're using dead celebrities, and they're just creating these voices and pictures and stuff, like without any consent, without anyone being involved, without anything like that, then yeah, that's when it's a big problem. But something like this, I think we can maybe give an exception for, especially for a smaller production, for something that, people put a lot of passion into, for such a great, idea, script, performances, everything. I think we can give it a pass this time. Kill Counter. We've arrived at the kill counter. This is the part of the podcast where we go through the kills and deaths in the film. Here, there are 5 kills and deaths in the film Late Night with the Devil. The first death comes off-screen. I normally don't count off-screen deaths unless they are pivotal to the plot, which this is. After Christelle finishes his cold reading and has a real premonition, he's left shaken after saying that Minnie had a message for an unwed man with a ring. Jack argues with Carmichael that he is sure that Christelle was communicating with Madeline, Jack's deceased wife. That's the name he used to call her, in private. It was his pet name for her. Carmichael and Christelle argue with each other until Christelle becomes sick and vomits up a black liquid. Christelle is quickly rushed to the hospital, and Jack later learns that Christelle passed away due to an internal hemorrhaging caused by the devil. That's what we assume. The next 3 deaths come after Jack pushes June to have Lily conjure the demon, Mr. Wriggles. She makes reference to meeting Jack under the tall trees. Carmichael then hypnotizes Gus into thinking he has worms coming out of him. We learn that this was a mass hallucination experienced by everyone in the studio. Carmichael begins to accuse Jack of faking and becomes melted by Lily's demonic powers, and she quickly kills June by slitting her throat, then killing Gus by snapping his neck when Lily becomes fully possessed. Lastly, the final death is that of Lily herself. Jack has a vision of Madeline's spirit, and she begs him to stab her. After using the ritualistic dagger that June had brought with her to stab Madeline, the scene shifts back to reality, and we see Jack has actually stabbed Lily. And honestly, those are all pretty solid deaths. We don't see Christelle's, but we get that black goo that or liquid or whatever he throws up, and then the stuff leading up to Mr. Wriggles fully taking possession of Lily, and she kills Carmichael, June, and Gus 3 in a row, and then the ending, where they set up with the dagger, and it's essentially Chekhov's gun. It's ready to go off at any moment. It's brought up for a reason. It comes back at the end, and bam, he stabs her with it, killing her. Now I move on to my final thoughts for the film. So Late Night with the Devil, I remember hearing about it a little bit before it came out. I don't remember seeing a trailer exactly, but I kept hearing things about it. Kept hearing that it's one of the best horror films for the year. And I was like, okay, well, how good could it be, right? Then I kept seeing, and then I saw the promotional art, and I think I saw maybe a trailer. I don't remember. But then I just kept hearing more and more, and, it was going to be a limited release, and then it was going to be released on Shudder, and, that, it just kept getting all this praise. It had, a great score on Rotten Tomatoes, and all this stuff, right? And I wanted to go see it as soon as I could at night, and me and my brother decided to go see it finally, and in all honesty, it lived up to the hype. Honestly, it really did. This was a great film. David Dastmalchian is an amazing character actor, and I wish he was in more things. I listened to an interview he did on last podcast on the left, and he talked about, him doing, how, him just his life, growing up, and, learning, and, getting into horror. He lived in such a plain area, nothing too crazy happened where he lived, nothing out of the ordinary, just that he just happened to be into, monsters and serial killers and ghosts and the paranormal, supernatural, aliens, this and that, right? And I feel like that's what a lot of people who are into horror kind of come from. They kind of start from. They don't come from these places where it's all these kind of weird things all the time. I mean, except for I would say maybe the exception is me, where growing up, all I heard was, well, maybe that might help too in some of these situations, but I heard about these kind of ghost stories, and I heard about because my mom was into true crime, so I kept hearing about these things, and I watched things like History's Mysteries, and I used to watch Beyond Belief, and I would watch all these different shows about ghosts and aliens and things, cryptids and things like that. So it wasn't just that; it was also watching these horror films and watching this horror media, and a lot. The 80s and 90s were lousy with horror for kids, which we seen Scooby-Doo was the 60s, but we had things like Goosebumps, we had Are You Afraid of the Dark, we had things like Fear Street, we had all this media for horror for kids. And I think that kind of helped to bring me into that fold and bring a lot of people into it and just build their love for this kind of spookiness, right? But I think that culminates in this, where you have such a love for it that you bring some idea from when you're a kid. That's what the Cairnes brothers say. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I've been saying it the whole time. It's Cairnes. And I think that's correct. Whatever. The directors of this film, the directors and writer of this film, like I said, they talked about how, to them, the 70s and 80s talk show kind of had this kind of adult kind of feeling of you want to watch it, but ooh, it's kind of, you shouldn't be watching it as a kid, because oh, they're talking about adult things. Oh, ooh, look at this is a spooky story about ooh, could this have happened? And they're talking about oh, look at this, it's a murderer or whatever that's going around. And, talking about these adult things, and yeah, to you it's oh, I shouldn't be watching this, and you kind of springboard from there into what is one way to to get this idea for a talk show host who ends up summoning or starts summoning the devil, right? Late Night with the Devil. And it's oh, you know what? They used to bring on these psychics. They used to bring on these people who would, cold read, who would bend spoons, who would, pretend to levitate, and then they'd be called out and stuff like that. Or they'd interview these people that they were into demonology, or they study ghosts, or they're ghost hunters, or they have ESP. These different types of things, right? And I think that combined with everything, and great acting. One, let's just start right there. Like I said, David So Small Chin, great. All the other actors are great. Honestly, I think she plays Laura. June, Dr. June Ross Mitchell, her name Laura Gordon. I think she does an amazing job in this. I think the guy who plays Leo Fisk, Josh Kwong Tart, he does a great job. I think even just the small parts of by Faisal Bazi and Reese Aturi, they play Christou and Gus respectively, and even the guy who plays Ian Bliss, who plays Carmichael, he does a good job of imitating, the Amazing Randy in like a certain way without being like a one for one. And I think the effects are pretty good too, like for being a small budget film. And sure, yeah, the AI, oh my god, so much AI everywhere. There wasn't. It was like 3 stills, and it just comes in as like the commercial break, like you used to see. That would like a slate that would come up. That's pretty much what it was. I think it captures that feel too of, because I remember being a kid watching, like Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, David Letterman, and you watch these like Tonight Show hosts and late night hosts, and they really captured it that really well in this film. I think, just everything about it, this idea of like, oh yeah, you got to keep going, like the ratings, man, you're doing so well. The guys over there, they're the sponsors, but you know what, you're doing so well, you don't even need the sponsors anymore. And then like this, like, like, oh, well, like, this guy's, like, dead. Like, he died on route to the hospital. Like, maybe we should shut this down. And then, like, just things here and there. And then, like, the way as it progresses, it just keeps getting bigger. And I like, too, that, like, they don't wait to, like, start getting into this stuff. They kind of started at the beginning with, like, the Grove. They talk about the Grove. And they talk about, like, ooh, like, mysterious things there. And then, like, Christou does, like, his cold readings where it's kind of fake. But then it moves right into being, like, oh, a real thing. And I like that. I like that it just kicks right into it. And, we get to learn about, like, I love that, like, idea of, like, hearing about, like, the survivor of mass, satanic cult church where it's like what's his name, Anton LaVey, because at the time he was really popular, and it really feels like that kind of gritty late 70s early 80s feel of television that that's what I picture, that's what I imagine it was like at the time, because from what I see looking back, I remember as a kid being told about that and seeing the stuff from that time, things like All in the Family and all the shows from Norman Lear, MASH, and all that. And that's kind of what it looked like to me. Seeing old Johnny Carson, that's what it looked like. It's got this kind of like certain je ne sais quoi quality to it. And I think, like for these guys to put this down on paper, get this thing all together, and get this production put together, and you got these actors, the amazing effects that they got on it, the things that they just the story itself. That's what people forget, is that like you're putting together so much stuff, and for one little hiccup to derail your whole the suspension of disbelief is ridiculous to me. I feel like you're being a bitch of a baby, and you're letting things. Yes, I get it. I understand. I am there with you. AI art should not be used at all. AI should be regulated as hardcore as we can, because it can replace the people that actually do these things. It can replace writers. It can replace, CGI and effects artists. It can replace the actors. It's ridiculous, and yes, we should stop it and nip it in the bud. But the thing is, when it's something like this, when it's a smaller film, and they use it to just make basic like art, and then they go back and kind of add their own-ness to it. They get someone to come through and go over it. I think that's where it should be used, right? It should be used to help people who can't do these things. It's like the same thing like with drones, right? You don't complain about drones taking over like What about the helicopter guys who used to go out? And what about the guys in the cherry pickers, huh? To get these shots, huh? Remember ladders and these big rigs that you needed to get these shots, these higher up shots to get like the cool like sweeping shots. Oh, you can just get a drone and do that? That's ridiculous. That's taking everybody's jobs away. See how it sounds like? This is, if you use it correctly, you can use it in a way that helps and saves and works to an advantage for a film that needs it. And see, a film, if this was a bigger production and they used it a lot more, then yeah, I would be there with you boycotting this film, even if it was really good. But the fact that it's a great film, honestly, I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. 4-star film that, you know, it keeps you engaged the whole time. And it's not too long, and it's like a perfect, good, like, succinct little film. And for how very sparingly they use that AI, I think this is a non-starter of a conversation and overshadows this whole great production, great acting, great directing, great writing, great everything. Everything about this, for the most part, is really good. Does it kind of feel a little here and there? You know, it kind of, I don't know. I feel like some of it, I think it's just because that quality of the 70s. I feel like it's a little over the top at certain points. Maybe a little too much. But other than that, I think, like I said, you got a great actor like David Dastmalchian to come in to play this host who, like I said, I listened to this interview, and, you know, he talks about how he took the time. He took the time to build this character, to get the actions, the movements right, to get that, the way he talks, the way he he's been around for a while, you know, it's his comeback, this is one last shot type of thing, you know, to get that into that mindset of that. And that's where, you know, he's a true artist, someone who really wants to be in this, who wants to do this, someone who I think, you know, I love to see in more things like this. And I'd love to see more from the directors and the writers, the Cairnes brothers, I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, I'd love to see more from them, honestly, just to see, like, this reminds me of, like, Talk to Me, like, not in the same vein at all. Like, it's just that, like, I'm just so glad to see, like, these people putting out, like, these smaller films that are making such a bigger splash. That it's not, we're just waiting for, like we were before, like, oh, we're waiting for the next Saw, we're waiting for the next Friday the 13th, we're waiting for the next this or that. But these ones are coming out every once in a while throughout the year that are just, like, knocking it out of the park. And it's like, it kind of felt like we were kind of sliding back a little bit the last couple of years, especially with Blumhouse kind of, like, eclipsing certain things. But I think now we've gotten back to the stride of, like, yeah, we're getting back into, like the golden years of horror again. So, were your ratings good? Can I give you a cold reading? Should I worry that the Grove could be out there listening to the podcast? And should I be worried? Probably. We want to thank you all for listening, and if you like what you hear, please subscribe and get every new episode downloaded. Do you have any personal or fictional, paranormal, supernatural, or unexplained stories? We'd love to read them on the podcast. Please send your stories, recommendations, or anything else to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to show more support, you can follow our socials on Instagram, Threads, or TikTok @horrorboxpodcast. Also, you can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It really helps out. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the horror box.
Now, Lily, I understand that you have a name for this thing that lives inside of you.
Mm-hmm. I call him Mr. Wriggles.
And why do you call him that?
He kind of wriggles his way inside my head, and then he wriggles his way out.